You play the white thing, right? Okay.
I'm ready.
3, 2, 1. Hello everyone and welcome to another Photo Mishmash. I'm Christina.
And I'm Toby.
And this is episode 53. Welcome everybody. Today is tax day. We are trying a new day.
What a way to start off this.
For the podcast. So the first thing that we want you all to do is down below in the show notes, you will find a link to the question of the week. And this week, we want to know what day is your favorite day for us to have the podcast. We're going to have a poll running. And so for all of you watching, whether or not you're watching live or you'll watch later, we'd like you to fill out the poll and we'll take those answers into consideration. I think once wedding season gets started, we won't really be able to do the podcast on Fridays, so we're trying to find a new day that will work for everybody.
And we're doing it on Wednesday because even though we don't have, well, we're helping my mom move this weekend, so we'll be out of town. I don't love Wednesdays. We can certainly make this work. I think we can make some Fridays work, but then if we're moving the schedule around a whole lot and then you have to be like, oh, what is it this week?
Yeah.
It would be nice to be very consistent.
That's amateur hour.
That's amateur hour.
Yeah.
We're done with amateur hour. Hopefully the audio's still working. Is the audio still working? I will say, we had a error-free episode last week.
We did.
Jinxed this probably. I'll say I'm very nervous about the audio today. I was recording just locally using this device earlier today, dropping out multiple times. So we might be running a little hot. Let me turn that down. I see there's a warble. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. It's going to be how it's going to be.
Yep. And so while he is fixing that, we wanted to let you know that today's sponsors are Patreon. So you guys are our sponsors. And McKay Photography Academy.
That's right. Let's move on. We talked
brief?
Yes, you said I couldn't be that brief. I let you do it and be that brief. What I'd like to do as a model is say the brief, who is bringing you this show, and then space it out a little bit during the show and spend some time talking to wonderful people supporting us. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say right now.
So moving on along.
In case
you missed it.
Yeah, see, in case you missed it, because we did our last show on a Friday, I didn't put anything out over that period of time, so there's not really anything from us in case you missed it. Now, there's a lot to get into in the news section in just a moment, but I will mention that my Sony A7 Mark II review will be out tomorrow, so you can look for that. I'm pretty proud of it. I think it's good. I have a lot of information to share about this camera. I'm going to follow it up with a tips video as well. I outlined some tips in the review, but I'd like to do a video where I really dive into the discussion of this. And, you know, I teased this on Instagram, or I don't know if it was a tease, but just the fact that this full-frame camera can sit here on this tiny little $10 Joby GorillaPod. Now, it has magnet feet as well. I don't think it's strong. I mean, the magnet feet are very strong. I've been very happy using it. I know it was strong enough to hold the A5100 in a horizontal position against like fence posts and light poles, magnetic ones, or metallic ones. I don't think it would do that for this, but it's still, I mean, it's just a nice illustration of how light this thing is. And truthfully, it would be fine with the kit lenses too. It may be a little bit more inclined to tip forward. One quick annoyance about this camera is that if you want to shoot in that higher codec, that AVS-C codec, it's very grumpy about which cards you're going to use, and it must take a fast 64 gigabyte card. It has to be a 64 gigabyte card. Really, Sony? Here I have a SD card from you guys that's very fast, very nice. In fact, it's faster than the 64. But if I put this card in, the camera says, can't do it. It's a minor annoyance, but it's a little annoyance. I doubt they'll fix that with firmware because it kind of would seem like going backwards. but they should, because a 32 gigabyte card, you could even use a 16. This is a 50 megabit. This is a 50 megabyte bit rate codec. It's not creating gigantic files that are going to fill up the card instantly. 16 gigabytes is enough. Why did you make this limit of 64?
Yep.
Maybe there's a reason.
Yep. So not much, in case you guys didn't miss much in the last 4 days. But looking ahead this week, as you mentioned, there will be a full review of the NX1. There will be another Raw Doctor. And next week at this same time for now, we'll have the next podcast.
Yes, okay. So we are taking your input on the show date, but for consistency's sake, at this time being, we will be back here with you all next Wednesday at probably 6 p.m.
Great.
Okay.
So let's move on to news.
Are you a little thrown off by the speed with which we're plowing into this?
A little bit,
yeah. You seem like it a little bit.
So a new quadcopter, a new, the proper name for these?
You know, drones, most people call them.
A new drone
technically,
company.
this is a quadcopter. Yes.
The name of the company is 3DR Solo, is that right?
3D Robotics Solo.
3D Robotics.
Yep.
They are plowing in with a new quadcopter or drone.
Yeah.
And it looks pretty snazzy.
It does. Can we get it?
No.
Okay. You know, I wondered how long. There certainly are other manufacturers besides DJI, but DJI, as I saw somebody write the other day, is basically like Kleenex. You know, there are other facial tissues, but people say, don't pass me a facial tissue. They say, give me a Kleenex. And when people go flying, they're like, you're going to go flying with your DJI? No, not everybody does. Maybe that tissues and Kleenex is a little bit too strong of a comparison, but it definitely has a lock on the action quadcopter market. There are others coming along. This guy looks like it offers some neat technology. Now, it's starting at $1,000. That is without, I believe, the gimbal, which that is a critical piece of technology about this. Nick is in the chat room saying, don't tell Dave about the new drone. Well, Nick, it doesn't have the gimbal installed. I think you have to pay a little bit more for that. But this is really designed for somebody like me that just wants to get out there and film some cool cinematic stuff. Or Christina, I should maybe even say better designed for you, because it's got these modes where you don't have to practice flying it a bunch. You can say, do a cinematic circle around me.
Why would you assume that I have to practice a bunch?
Well, just anybody. Okay, I didn't mean, let's go back to us for a second so you can see my face. Anybody needs, well, not anybody, most people need to practice a little bit to get good cinematic stuff out of this. To just fly it up and get some shots, all of them, all of the kind of consumer-oriented ones are very easy. But to set up these cool shots where you have this kind of cinematic circling or flyby, or what if you wanted to ride your bike down, fly in front of you, record, maybe not you, but somebody who's really exciting on a bike and could do tricks and things like that. It has all of that. So, pre-programmed. You push a couple buttons in the interface on your smartphone, Android or iOS, and running. So, pretty neat. About similar fly times as the DJI Phantom, 25 minutes or so. I think the follow me and the linear tracking modes are really neat, and it'll be exciting to see if this catches on and what the reviews are. It'd be fun to ask B&H to send one of these to me for review at some point. We'll see. We'll see if they'd be.
Yep, maybe they'll be game.
Maybe. All right.
Next up is, second while I pull this up, Magic Lantern had a very funny April Fool's joke.
Is it funny?
I guess maybe it isn't. We're not big fan of April Fool's jokes around here, except for, I know that Toby was planning a prank on everybody this year because...
I might use it next year. Listen, I have mixed feelings about April Fools. Most of the stuff just either comes across as mean or stupid enough that it's not funny, or I don't know, just kind of a waste of time. For instance, somebody sent me yesterday, I'll leave your name out of this, a link to a lens from Canon, a new lens, 16 to 600 f2.8. They were so excited. They're like, oh my God, but I can't imagine how much this is gonna be. I looked at it and was like, it was a picture of a box, very convincingly done. And I said, no way. Clicked through to the article. It was like posted by Canon Norway Rumors or something. And it was posted on April 1st. So, I mean, little things like that. That's kind of funny, haha. But I feel like generally I'm kind of a poop about it. A little bit of a party pooper. Comes up from my years of being a practiced party pooper. I've practiced being one for many years. Well, Magic Lantern. It's an open source software, which means a lot of people have their hands in this software. A lot of people are working on it, adding this little bits of code, and that's how a group of people can create something for free just as good as a huge corporation like Canon. Well, one of those developers thought it would be funny to add a little code. It's not that picture. Basically a joke mode that gave it a 1 in 1,000 chance of a quote-unquote crash if you weren't recording on April 1st.
Wow, and they just programmed it to all cameras on that day.
Anybody who was running that version of the Magic Lantern software, actually I think it's been in the version for quite a while, it ended up with this blue screen of death you can see on the screen there.
Wow, that's actually pretty good.
You think so?
Yeah, I mean, it's clever. It's very clever.
What if you were about to head in, what if you decided to put Magic Lantern on your camera for some of the nice features that it provides? You were about to go into a wedding, shoot a wedding, and you death on your camera. It says this, a problem detected and Magic Lantern has been shut down to prevent damage to your camera. If this is the first time you've seen this stop error screen, restart your camera. If the screen appears again, follow these steps. Now, if you weren't in freak out mode and reading through the steps, it might occur to you that something's a little funny here, because here are the steps. Go to live view and enable digic peaking. Take a photo of a calendar on today's date. Try pressing the magic button quickly enough. The magic button quickly enough. And then it's got a bunch of technical information on kind of gobbledygook that would go back into freak out mode. But even if you're like, oh, this must be April Fool's or something, it still is going to do it to you unless you pull it out and say, okay, I'm not going to use Magic Lantern for this. Now, there are people that are building their business using Magic Lantern in serious applications, and I could be pretty grumpy about that. Now, there were a lot of people that were very grumpy, fired up, went to the forums and said, pitchforks, torches. And the Magic Lantern guys were like, okay, we'll give you all of your money back that you spent on this software.
Yeah, but still, even if people didn't pay, it still seems kind of a crummy thing to do. But yeah, so points for cleverness, that's a word, right? But yeah, kind of maybe minus some brownie points for like really potentially freaking people out and causing some damage.
I'll say this, I did take the 5D Mark III I took on our recent trip. I did have Magic Lantern on there. I wanted it on there for a couple of reasons. One, the focus peaking is just really nice if you're trying to do any kind of video or even manually focusing. Two, these actually aren't in order of importance to me because I think this next one for this trip I was really excited about. The intervalometer, built-in intervalometer. So many cameras have it these days, not the Sony unless you pay them $10, stupid Sony Play Store people. But many cameras do, and I love my trigger trap little dongle and smartphone, but I really have to make sure I always had that with me and dedicate my smartphone to it. So built-in intervalometer, and the last one, which I liked a lot, didn't get to use a whole lot, but did some, is bulb mode with a timer. You say, wait a sec, bulb mode's already in the 5D Mark III. Yes, but you're limited to either having a device or holding down the shutter button, which isn't really reliable, or going to manual mode and your maximum time is 30 seconds. So, trigger trap, 3 features that I liked and I used on this trip: focus peaking, intervalometer, and a bulb, which let me set an exposure of 1 to 2 minutes. It's nice. It's nice functionality that it really adds to the camera. And one other thing to mention is that I don't think it's a rumor anymore. I think it's fact. The C300 Mark II, dual readout from the sensor. Basically what Magic Lantern has implemented on the software side of giving you better dynamic range by recording in a low and a high ISO at the same time and then smooshing those together, which you can do in Magic Lantern.
That's very cool.
That's cool. So, funny joke, as Roger said, you know, not so funny if you were affected by it. And I agree.
And
it's not the worst, it's not the end of the world, but because somebody could always pull out the card and their camera's going to be fine. But again, some people are building their business on this software, and
well, I don't think you can say that some people are building their business on it. I think that
some people, okay.
A lot of people find it useful and have incorporated it into their workflow, but I don't think you can say people are building their business off of it. And like you just said a few minutes ago, Magic Lantern owes no one nothing because it's a free product and it's a really useful free product. So that expands the functionality of what you likely paid, you know, at least hundreds, if not thousands for. So, moving on.
Garmin releasing a new set of action cams. I meant to grab mine. I have one of the older ones, the Verb. They're keeping that name, but they've got these new styled ones, which look a lot more GoPro-like, if you ask me. And I guess the real differentiation from these action cams to the GoPros is the fact that I still have it tacked to the wall behind me. Nobody can see now. They'll integrate with many of Garmin's watches and GPS watches and GPS devices to allow you to overlay a lot of cool information in the video after. Now, I've played with this a little bit in the Verb. I went for a bike ride. I was running the GPS watch, and it allowed me to, on the video, display a little map of where I rode with a little dot that represented me. Kind of like when you're playing Mario Kart, for anybody who's ever played Mario Kart, and you get that little overview map along with the other thing. So
give me some practical examples where you might be able to
use
that functionality.
That's a good question. Serious athletes who want to show cool things going on. It's so hard to get back to us sometimes. You know, like the amount of tons of different sensors. Let's say start with a cyclist who wants to be able to show their speed, their average speed, their fastest descent on a downhill. All of this can be recorded and displayed on the video you're watching. You're watching the cyclist zoom down the pants, and you can see that he's hitting 50 kilometers an hour. Actually, that's pretty fast, isn't it? No, it's 50 kilometers an hour. You know, and be like, wow, and know how much he's tilting or his cadence if he's pedaling it all downhill, probably. Or race car driver or windsurfer, how much air did they get going off that last wave? That can all be kind of registered with these gauges that overlay on the video.
So more for like learning and analytical purposes than for like promotion and creative.
No, I would say there's a bit of creative side to this because it's kind of like, you know, here you're doing this action and you're getting more information to you that gives you more of a sense of what's going on than just watching the person do it alone.
Okay.
I don't know. It's neat. It's, you know, GoPro, to use the same term as I just did for the DJI, they've got a lock on the market. I mean, there are other action cameras. Sony makes decent ones. I can't really think of many more than that. But Garmin's trying again here to break into this market. There's certainly some room. Skydivers. Would you like to know their altitude, how fast they're falling? The wingsuit dudes, how fast are they moving when you're watching these GoPro videos? Why not have this that tells you a little speed readout?
Right. I guess they already have this information. And if they're using it creatively, my thought is that they probably don't want... So you're saying that this offers like an overlay on the video? So you have no control over... Do you have control styling of the
absolutely.
overlay? Oh,
yes.
you do?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And one of you had that before, but you had fairly limited gauges and dials. And allow you to build custom gauges and dials, and I imagine to some degree customize those.
Cool.
It is. It's neat. I have to say, when I worked with the software before, it was incredibly buggy. And one of the things, if you went for a long enough bike ride, and so the file looped because it hit that 4 gigabyte limit, the map would get all screwed up and it would think you were starting over for some reason, which is annoying. So short events like skydiving or, you know, doing a couple tricks around a park of some sport thing.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, we've talked enough about.
Yeah.
The
Trolina
verb.
wants to know what's happened to the Polaroid Cube. I think a couple people buy it now and then. It's Photo Jojo's store sells it. So.
So Apple, in their efforts to always provide their customers with cameras, they have acquired LinX. LinX, that's the name of the company. A camera maker that promises DSLR performance in phones. So I am, you know, remains to be seen. I'll see it. I'll believe it when I see it.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds promising. I love my Apple camera. I mean, I don't know. Are there any other phones that you know of that?
Be careful what you're about to say here, Christina.
No. I'm asking you. Like, I'm asking you.
In objective,
really
well, here, let's come back to us for a second. Yeah, I can't ever do it so fast. In objective side-by-side comparisons right now, many people are giving the Samsung Galaxy S6 an edge in the Galaxy Note 4. And then you also have some of the pure view cameras from Nokia, and you also have the Lumix phone, which actually has a 1-inch sensor in it, that, you know, are creating better. Now, all right, throw a lot of those second ones I said, nobody's really buying those in any kind of great numbers, but the Galaxy S6 is selling very well. It's got optical image stabilization in the smaller model. That's why I want it so bad. I want that. Which the iPhone 6 does not. Only the iPhone 6 Plus does.
Yeah,
So,
but I'm talking about.
Oh, what are you talking about?
Not just image stabilization, which is useful.
No.
But I mean, in terms of like the actual image quality and the
Yes.
outcome of the photo, what it looks like.
Yep.
Better.
Better.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
So you're living in that Apple fanboy world or fangirl world that are able to produce, you know,
No, I'm
at
just-
this level, and it's just not true anymore.
I mean, I don't keep up enough with all of the announcements from different phone manufacturers and their cameras, but based on experience and phones, Android phones that you've owned, you know, and you saying, this has an awesome camera, this is supposed to have an awesome camera, and then, you know, we compare it against pictures that I'm able to take with my iPhone, which is actually a pretty old iPhone, it's not even the most current one, and they're, but yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
no.
I don't
Yeah.
disbelieve that, you
Okay.
know, other phones are incapable of taking nice pictures.
Oh, shoot, I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, but when all of these cameras have the big limitation, to get back to this article, is it's a very small sensor, and so you cannot get a nice depth of field, you know, without some software trickery. And like the HTC, or sorry, not the HTC, the Galaxy Note 4 has this kind of Lytro-like capabilities in it, and to post-process using a little smart technology. This looks like it's going to have kind of multiple sensors that are going to improve low light performance, HDR, refocusing, color fidelity, shutter lag, and more. The multi-lens cameras are able to acquire very accurate depth information of the complete scene. So then we may be able to get a more DSLR-like depth of field. Again, it's still going to be probably post-processing trickery, but it's going to be so smart that it's going to be virtually, you know, not noticeable. I say that the samples I've seen from the Galaxy Note 4 in some cases are just as good as shooting with a shallow depth of field lens. There are certainly some where you notice that it's basically drawn a little fuzzy outline to make things.
I hate that.
But,
I think you need to have real depth of field
Right.
or none at all, because it's really difficult to make it look.
So you know, why would Apple buy these? Probably to be able to put them into their future phones. iPhone 7, 8, somewhere in there.
So, and of course, when they announce it, it will be the best of the bestest.
It will, even if it's not, because that's what Apple
Right.
does.
Right. So next on the news section, actually an article we hadn't talked about this, but it sounds like it's an ongoing thing. We hadn't talked about it on any podcasts that we've done. Nikon warns of more fake DSLR. The D610 and D4S now on watch list. So it turns out that Nikon cameras have been sent in for repair, and techs have found out that they fake bodies on, or they have bodies with different names on them than the bodies that they actually, you know, the parts that they actually.
Oh wow! So it's like it's some old model.
Yeah.
Just relabeled.
Masked.
I didn't actually read this article.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Good thing I did.
Good thing you did. Right. So the way to check your camera is the same. Enable the overview option and take a look at the camera name displayed in the upper right corner of the screen. That's the actual camera you have, regardless of what it looks like from the outside. Well, how good a job are these fakers doing at making the name, I guess, is what I'm curious about. What I kind of thought, Scott put this into the rundown, thank you, Scott. What I thought this was leaning towards is what I've heard from people in the past, and what I heard from Corey just the other day. Had a friend, saw a really good deal at, I'm going to say at Abe's of Maine, which I've heard varying reports about. Some people have no issues buying from them. Some people have had a lot of issues. Basically, it was a gray market camera, and they do that phone call thing where they're like, we just got to check your credit card and you make sure you're the person. And then, oh, by the way, this is cameras in Japanese language only, but we got a special program we can load on there for X amount of extra dollars. And oh, you need this and this and this. And suddenly you're paying way more than you should if you'd just gone to Amazon or B&H. And I don't just say Amazon and B&H because they're affiliates or I'm an affiliate of them, but they just don't do that. They just give you the price you see is what you get, and nobody with Nikon and Canon is able to sell and be an authorized dealer below a certain point. Yeah. Same as Apple. It's that minimum price
MSRP.
Thank you. Is that what it is? No, the MSRP is minimum standard reduction pricing. I just make
Not
up
reduction.
Stuff.
No. The MSRP is a standard baseline price.
And you can't go below that.
Set for it, yeah.
Yeah, there's I think minimum
you can
authorized
go
prices.
below it, but that's, I mean, if it's too far below it, if it's too good to be true, it's probably not a good deal. So you just need to be careful and really do some research on the place that you're purchasing it from. I mean, I think if it's like $100 or $200 cheaper and you're trying to buy an expensive camera, you may be able to save a little bit of money, but at the same time, you won't get that peace of mind, you know, that the manufacturer will honor the warranty or that the camera will be free of issues. And you do get that peace of mind if you buy it from a reputable source. So think about that. So next story is kind of interesting and fun. An octopus has been trained by an aquarium in New Zealand to shoot a Sony TX30. Is that the name of the camera?
Yep. A little action cam. I mean, not sorry. A little like waterproof Sony cam.
Which octopus are incredibly smart creatures. Mm-hmm. We actually, while we were in the Pacific Northwest, saw one washed up on the beach shore, which was actually a little bit sad.
A dead one.
A dead one, yes. Yeah. But it was still kind of cool just to see one. And we've seen the ones at the Seattle Aquarium. Mm-hmm. And there's some crazy stories about those getting out of the tank and going to feast touch tank, right. Not too far from their own tank. Yeah. And then also they're just,
There's the story of the creatures. There's a story of the one in Germany, I think it was in some lab, where they would come in the morning and some of the lights went out and they couldn't figure out why, and they set up security cameras around during the night, and apparently the octopus was bothered by the light at night, and so after everybody left and it got quiet, the octopus would squirt some water up on the lights, burn them out, and have a nice evening in the dark. So they are very intelligent. It said they only took them 3 tries to understand the process. Now, what does it mean for an octopus to understand the photographic process? I'm not sure. But I bet it can take just as good pictures as some of the people that walk into that aquarium. So I don't know. Apparently the visitors can pose in front, and each photo costs $2 and directly benefits the aquarium. It's a neat idea. And again, I personally don't think we give animals nearly enough credit for being as intelligent as many of them are, but I really have no idea if the octopus understands what it's doing. It's pushing a button. Does it
Right.
know it's taking a picture?
Does it matter?
Does it know the rule of thirds? Or in Octopus, is it the rule of octocurds?
Yeah, but does it matter?
It's really depressing when you don't listen to my joke.
Well, was it really funny?
No.
Okay. No, but it still doesn't matter if it knows.
I just want to know. Does the octopus know?
Well, how would we know?
Well,
I mean,
I don't
it's
know.
cool that you can train it to do that. That's just...
You can. There are links to everything we're talking about right down below. So sometimes there's videos. You can go watch this world's first octopus photographer. You know, it might not be the world's first. A lot of GoPros are dropped in the water. There might be some snap happy octopi, I was going to say swimming, but yeah, they swim. Swimming around out there taking pictures of each other. Selfies. God, they got the perfect setup for selfies.
They do.
They do. All right. The perfect octopus selfie. Is that a show title? Remember, chat room, you are keeping track, and you got to let me know at the end of the best.
So we a story. It feels like every about this, and it's so annoying. More rumors about the 5D Mark IV. The app talk person.
They talked to their boyfriend, whose girlfriend once dated, who worked at a camera.
No, that wasn't it. It sounded like it was a pretty legit person. And long story short, there's not going to be 5K in the next 5D Mark IV because
5K?
I'm getting ahead there. And most recent release.
The cinema sales.
Yeah. So happening.
No, let me talk about it for a second. I made fun at the beginning. It's and it makes a lot of sense to me, and now somebody's come along and nicely written up in a much better way than I've been blabbing about it. Canon is deathly afraid of their cinema sales, and the 5D Mark not likely to have because of that fact. Maybe it'll have log profile, which is this flatter, more grainy video, which actually I didn't mention that in my review, but the A7 Mark, it's hidden under picture profile. This isn't set in stone, far enough away. I just don't know yet. It doesn't stop lots. And you know, every once in a while I feel bad when we go on, but then I happen to be in a hotel room and I flip channels to E, and then they're going on and on about somebody lady's dress. Who cares what we're talking about? Some lady's dress. So I feel better. There is competing on Canon watch that the 5D Mark III successor will be split into two, a 5D Mark IV and a 5D-C. Now,
but it's already been split into two.
I know. It has 5DS and 5DSR. But they did that with Canon Rebel. We got the T6i and the T6S coming, which I got to notice that my order is. I don't know if that. I haven't heard anybody getting theirs yet, but that should happen soon. So.
Who cares? Let's see.
Yeah, we have to wait. I think it's quite possible that there won't be 4K.
Okay.
Moving on.
Sony will launch a new 100 camera with LX1.
Another rumor from the Sony Alpha guys that we'll see a micro four thirds sensor. Now, I wanted to show this post because I have to find it. Do I have it open? I don't think. I think I might have closed it. Sorry about that. We'll come back to it in a second. Can you start? Oh, well.
Nope.
You can't. Okay. So I wanted to show, because last week I talked about sensor size differences and, kind of poo-pooing the new Canon XC10 with its 1-inch sensor. But and Craig said, you keep talking before. I had to go look it up. Yeah, I'm sorry. I forget that you all don't watch every single video I did. And the GH4, which we're filming this with right now, has a micro four thirds sensor, which is larger. Now, how much larger? Well, there is a nice post on the Sony Alpha it just shows you. Let's see if I can get back to it by, what am I looking for? Sony Mark. That shows you the size difference. And when you're talking about the size, there doesn't it's very large until you kind of see it on paper. And then you say, oh, well, that can be a significant difference in gathering. It is somewhere in this post right here. Almost there. Oh, there's a nice graphic in this post. Out, I swear. Okay, anyway. I've posted this on my own site too before, but it would take me too long to find it. Oh gosh, we have no video back here.
And we are back. Sorry about that. It seems like we probably have it sorted out. We've been getting some reports from people that bandwidth isn't super great and you guys are getting some choppy video. I'm not really sure what we can do about that.
That actually is not on our end.
Beyond our control.
Because our bandwidth is green, and so that's on YouTube's end feeding back down, I believe. So, okay. We were talking about, well, sensor size. So when you hear about like 1/3 of an inch difference, when it's measured out on all of the different sides, it starts to look significant. And so from a 1 inch all the way up to an APS-C, you can almost fit that 1 inch in there 4 times. It's a big difference. But let's move on to that from something we talked about traveling light and how much we liked to travel light using this camera. And there are some people who feel very differently about traveling and making sure they capture all of the pictures they want. And where is it? This guy, recently spotted someplace in Japan at some anime convention. I'm going to blow this video up full screen here so you can see. He has got a massive strapped to him. So this is the guy right here in the corner of the frame. I know it's not the best. There aren't any really clear pictures, but you can see that he's got these, I don't know, these arms that come up over his back like the Dr. Ock in Spider-Man. And, well, just all of the stuff that's strapped down below, and I think somewhere around 28 seconds, another view. I'm skipping ahead because in the beginning, a lot of jiggly stuff.
It's a lot of gear.
Yeah. We should start shooting our live video shows like this, have somebody walking around the room with this gear.
And what would that accomplish?
I don't know. I just kind of wanted to bring it up as an example of something that we could move to. Now that made me think about, let me minimize this, a guy from Burning Man several years ago. And I don't remember. Aha, good. That's not the guy I'm talking about. One of his pictures with that video of his. Remember this?
Yeah, I do remember it.
So this is Eric Schwabel, went to Burning Man. This is started in 2010. He carried around this light suit that is basically, and he's got it kind of all set up in a rickshaw. It's a better look at it right here. And of course he's dressed as many Burning Man people are and not a whole lot of clothes. But you can see he's got these huge Pro Photo battery powered packs with the Pro 7 heads. That's a lot of battery juice that you need, but it allows him to basically overpower the sun, and you get these very cool looking lit, or what do you call, isn't there a term for these? This shot where it's in full sun but you are lit, but you're litting them more than the sun is.
I don't think there's a term.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's just a style of photography.
Okay.
Yeah, they're cool. I mean, I think that as a body of work, they're really cool. And just the fact that, you know, he gets this awesome shots or these awesome shots and still looks like a Burning Man person.
Right. Yeah.
And his setup is really cool too.
Yep. Okay. Good. Hey, you know what we wanted to do?
What?
We wanted to take a few moments and talk about travel opportunities with us and McKay Photography Academy.
That's right.
Yeah, I've been talking to David, and they just got back from an incredible Tanzania trip. It looks like it was filled with all of the classic moments that you would think about if you went on a safari. The baboons, the lions, the cheetahs, the elephants. Just picture after picture. I don't know if Nick is still around, but he posted an Instagram today of baboon traffic jam on their way out of the Ngorongoro, I think that's how you say it, crater.
Sure.
Just a bunch of baboons on the road. Awesome, just right there. Not like way off in the distance, but right there. Fantastic opportunities. I know David is working on putting together some future trips to Africa. Not ready to talk about those, but what we are able to talk about is
2 upcoming One is to Greece. There are two spots left for the Greece trip. They're going to be traveling to basically island hopping. No, they're going to spend some time in Athens.
Yep.
Well, actually, we are going to spend some time in Athens because we're going to be there too. But island hopping and going to some of the smaller, least populated islands, you get a very tourist-free experience. Very kind of, I don't know, insider sort of.
Yeah, and I think
experience.
this is one of the things that David has really done an amazing is you just don't go to only to these tourist locations where you're kind of in the throng. Also, he's found these places and made these connections with people and the team. Got to include Nick too, especially if he's still in the chat room. I think he left. But put together these trips that are just take you to amazing locations and allow you to get awesome photos. I mean, I'm looking back through the last year of my pictures, my favorite photos from the last year, most of them were made either on the Italy trip or in the Montana trip. And you're put into these places where it kind of becomes difficult to take a bad picture.
Yeah, it does. Right.
I mean, you could still do it if you tried, but it's hard.
And the next trip that we're really excited about is to New Zealand in February. And I believe they have a few spots left for that trip as well.
Yeah, I believe it is only 2 or 3 though.
Okay.
It's filling up.
And it should be pretty awesome. New Zealand has been on my bucket list for a very long time.
Right.
So it's kind of a dream come true to be able to go there and to spend the whole time photographing it. Some like-minded people who enjoy photography.
That's right. It's one of the fun things about this trip. And I said this last time, but I want to say it again because I stress it. I think as a beginner, or even, a few years ago, I would have been nervous about going on a trip like this because maybe I would say something that would make me sound dumb as far as photography goes, or maybe I just, wouldn't be able to make pictures like the people around me are making, and that stuff just doesn't. Everybody is nice. We have people of all abilities, from people who are nervous to turn their dial from anything other than auto, to people who been on a lot of David's trips and are just back again and excited to kind of travel with those guys and have a chance to take some pictures as well. And everybody is treated nicely with just tons of instructional opportunities there if you want them. It's not, we're never sitting down in a place and being lectured. This is what you're going to go do now.
It's very hands-on.
It's you're doing it.
And EJ Burnell asked, or actually was Pocketful on the chat, asked how many tutors to students on the trip. So it's a, 1 to 4 or 5 ratio. So 1 tutor to every 5 people.
Yeah.
So
there's almost always somebody within reach, and you can say, hey, should I lower my ISO on this here? And you just ask for opinion, or say, how would you compose this picture? It's, as we're happy to do. Just a lot of fun, and we hope some of you out there will join us, and we'll be talking about future trips as they come up as well.
Yep.
Okay.
So
now we got.
And let's.
What's that?
Should we point people to the McKay Photography Academy website?
Well, for those who are watching, I don't think the link went in there, but when you're watching live, there is a link to the McKay Photography Academy right down in the show notes of this video.
Great.
Tell them we sent you. So they say, hey, it's working.
Let them know. Okay, so we're going to move on. And then after that, we're going to go over questions. There's already a long list of questions that we are going to go over. But if we have some extra, we'll be picking a few here and there that we consider to be, questions that maybe haven't been asked before or are particularly relevant questions. So yeah, go ahead. Now would be the time to start adding your questions. Roy, and I'm not sure if I saw Ruby on the chat. I don't think in the chat today, but Roy's taking people's questions and adding them to our list. So do you want to lead us into the discussion because you chose the topic for today?
Well, I just, I took the discussion today is just from a couple of different reader questions. The line is going to blur from when we from discussion into reader questions. This is a good question that I wanted you to answer, Christina, from David H. And that is, when you're shooting a portrait, how do you know whether or not you're going to shoot landscape or portrait orientation? Could you answer that?
Yeah, so actually I just want to add a little bit of more, because David says, feel like portrait orientation is easier to get more of the person's body, while landscape is more for headshots, but I'm sure it's more complicated than that. It's not really. And it's very dependent on, so there are lots of photographers that are fine doing a horizontal headshot, and then others that like to do a portrait orientation headshot because that's just what they're used to. That's how they like to compose their photos. Maybe they're better at composing portrait orientation photos. In photojournalism or in journalism or photography or commercial photography, I think that an environmental shot tends to be where what's being featured in the shot is within surroundings that are relevant to the story that is being presented about the person. So then you would want to probably use a horizontal landscape orientation to showcase your subject, because you'll be able to fit. But you could also do that with a portrait orientation. I mean, it really depends on the composition that you have in front of you, the environment that you're working in, where the light's coming from. It depends on so many things. But generally, the way that I approach portraits is I try to take a portrait orientation, a photo that is portrait orientation, and then I try to take a horizontal portrait as well, just so that I have an option of both of those things to present to the client. So you want to get both. You want to try to get both, especially if you're shooting editorial. They like to have a portrait orientation and then a landscape orientation, because they need flexibility in terms of laying out, putting together a layout. So you might want to provide them with both of those orientations.
I would say, after you take your picture, here's how I personally decide, and I don't always, but if I notice something that is in the background or in the environment that I can use to help make this a strong composition, I may frame it in a landscape to add that element in. If there really isn't nothing going on, nothing happening back there, I'll probably shoot tight in a nice portrait orientation and really be just a portrait. It depends on whether or not you want or need to show any more of the background. Scott adds that a tip for environmental portraits, look for those strong horizontal or vertical in the scene and match your frame with what is provided in front of your camera. I think it's similar to what I'm saying, is look for these elements that can increase the strength of your composition. If they're not there, probably shoot portrait by itself.
Well, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be there in a portrait orientation. That's just something to keep in mind in general when taking any photo.
Okay. Let's move on to Craig's question about ETTR, exposed to the right. Now, he recently did that. And that basically means when you go to take a picture, instead of watching your exposure meter and making sure it's right smack dab in the middle, exposing a little bit to the right of that so the picture is brighter. And he was blown away by how much more dynamic range he got out of that image. I guess that's pretty much it. Much more dynamic range. This is a technique that is called ETTR, right? And for many sensors, it does provide benefits. There are some for many sensors, or some. You want to say just some?
Just some. Well, I know that Nikon is known for having sensors with a lot of dynamic range in the shadow. So if you're shooting Nikon, you may just want to expose them to the middle, because you're going to be able to recover those shadows most likely. I mean, I've seen examples of this, and it's pretty remarkable. For Canon, it's fairly easy to overexpose your highlights if you're not being careful. And highlights are something that's really, really difficult to bring back. on digital. With the exception of Sony cameras that have higher dynamic range. But in terms of like Canon, that's been my experience that I can over, but if I am working with like a really bright sky or something that's pure white, I would probably want to expose in the middle because I want to be able to have shadows and highlights.
What kind of things are you watching out for when you're exposing to the right a little bit?
What I just said.
Right.
Bright backgrounds, whites, pure whites.
Okay. Leading question, how are you judging whether or not you're getting the exposure you want?
Well, Instagram.
Not the picture on the back of the camera?
Not the picture on the back of the camera. Although you can enable your zebras and, you know, that they can tell you, or you can use your histogram and tell whether or not you've blown out any highlights or any shadows. But for the most part, I look at my meter exposed maybe like a third or 2/3 of a stop to the right, unless I'm shooting something bright like a white dress or sky or something white.
Right. Yep. And everything we said applies only to RAW. If you're shooting JPEG, you got to be really careful because if you get even close to clipping those highlights, it is all gone because it just gets thrown out and you cannot bring it back. White swaths or empty swaths in your image. So shooting RAW, exposing to the right in Canon cameras and some other as well can give you a little bit more information, but be careful.
Yeah.
It all kind of depends on what you're looking for, but one of the other things that happens is if I see people saying in the chat they like to underexpose, you can be careful though. If you underexpose and the scene looks you're fine. But if you underexpose and you need to bring that exposure up, noise is going to come out of something that comes out of something really fast, and it's like water out of a fireman's hose.
I'm reading the next question.
Okay. So you just got to be really careful because you can end up with a noisy picture very quickly with even a really you have to bring that exposure up in those shadow areas. All right. And Roy has a good, I think this made it in show notes, but Craig had asked this someplace that Roy answered, and Roy's got a good way for you to kind of walk through and test and learn what your sensor is going to give you the best result. Red flower picture in there as well that really got a lot taken out of.
Yeah, but let's talk about that because I think that's really important.
Okay.
I feel like you just touched on it, but didn't elaborate. So what this is saying is basically find something that's bright red, overexpose it a little bit, and you'll notice that bright reds, like colors that are on that spectrum of light, are going to be blown out much more quickly than just about any other color. And we've mentioned this before, that cameras are not really well equipped with handling that color spectrum. So reds look very, I don't know, I don't want to say vibrant because that's, you know, that I feel like that's just a euphemism for what it really is, which is like
like they're almost vibrating.
Yeah, they're just really, really bright.
Yeah.
That's
Unnatural?
really hard to fix. Unnatural, yeah. So, you know, just an example, last year we shot a wedding that the couple wanted club lighting during the reception. And what that meant was that they would have lots of spotlights shining on people, on the guests as they were dancing, and they were all different colors. So it was kind of a mess. Like there were green lights shining while at the same time magenta lights were shining, which if you guys do a lot of color correcting, you'll know that you can add magenta to get rid of green, green to get rid of magenta, but if you have both, it's kind of a disaster. And they had red and just really all, you know, lights, and they were bright, but not that bright, and they were shining on people. And when I took pictures, you know, that spectrum was completely blown out in terms of if I wanted that picture to color, it would look as though I had a really white, bright area that had been overexposed, but with like a red cast over it. So I had to turn them all to black and white to just sort of tone it down a little bit. But yeah, I mean, really watch out for those types of colors if you're photographing really bright colors, particularly reds, magentas, maybe even orange.
With Canon, I mean, that's where people walk around wearing shirts Canon red because Canon can struggle or has been known to give a certain look to red colors. And then you get really down to the science of these different sensors and how they treat these different colors and what is color. That's my mind being blown. So you've gone back to reading the chat. So I'm going to move on. Dalibor nicely posted an image of sensor sizes in the chat. So, oh bugger, I got to get to this page and that page. So there we got an APS-C versus the full frame sensor, and you can see that there is a significant difference at the yellow versus the red, but this, you know, gave me the kick in the butt I needed to go and find one that that has more difference. And so here we've got the Nikon 1-inch sensor here, or just 1-inch sensors in general. Is this kind of what color? Let's argue about color, some more aqua or tealish. And then the 4/3 above that. And then we got over the orange, and the yellow is the APS-C, because remember, Canon's is just a little bit smaller. It's one of the reasons why Nikon does just a little bit better in lower light on when you're comparing their APS-C size camera. And then you've got the full frame up here. So let's take a moment and look at this full frame versus this 1-inch. It is a significant difference. And then of course you've got a medium format, which just is enormous. So why am I showing this? I don't remember. Sensor sizes in some different degrees. Well, we know that. We've talked about it. So moving on to the next thing.
Next question.
It was part of the LX, the RX 100 might have a micro 4/3 sensor in it in the future instead of just a 1-inch sensor. It should give it some nice a boost in low light and a little bit more depth of field.
So I'm gonna skip this one question.
Well, Bikeberry wanted to know my opinions on the GH4. We love it. It's a fantastic camera if you want to be serious about making.
Yeah. KDO888 wants to make more prints and wants to know what aspect and maximum size are ideal for images captured with a 70D while maintaining the best image quality. I've seen frame size for digital prints. What's that? Oh, I'm not sure. That's part of the question. I'm not sure what this person's.
Well, I think that, you know, there are some, you know, what we talked about, the Lightroom videos that we're putting out in the exporting for print, that your camera sensor doesn't create a perfect 8x10 or 8x12. You need to crop some. So I think some people are offering these sizes that are perfect for straight out of the camera.
And how are they offering it?
Well, they say we're going to print you what is perfect for perfect for 60 ratio or perfect for the 3x2.
And who is doing this? Or the labs?
I'm assuming some labs online. Imagine offering some alternative print sizes so there isn't any cropping or letterboxing needed.
Huh. Well, I'd be interested in knowing which labs these are, because I've never heard of it.
Okay.
And and it would seem like there's just, I guess they can size it right to the appropriate whatever aspect ratio it is. They can always just print it on a larger picture and then trim it and then send it. But then would they really do that though? Because then you'd be stuck trying to find a frame for it. I guess you could custom frame it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, well, let's say first off, I think you should shoot at the 3:2 aspect ratio. That gives you can always go down to 16:9 in cropping. Mm-hmm. Shoot at 3:2 or 4:3, whatever your camera offers, and at the highest resolution.
Yeah.
And then do your post-processing crop image in the ratio that you want for the print you're going to make.
Yeah, and you're never really going to know what size print you're going to make until you... So this is, to me, this is how the printing process works. First, you have a set of pictures, then you have a space where you want to put a picture up, or you have a particular use for a picture. Then based on that side, if you're hanging it up on a space, you calculate the space you need to fill, or what is the space that the picture needs to fill, and then you print the picture based on, you can choose whatever aspect ratio is, works better with the picture. Generally, of thumb to follow is if you're shooting in a 3:2 aspect ratio, which is pretty common to DSLRs and just cameras in general, or digital cameras, current digital cameras that are not medium format. The 3:2 aspect ratio is just give yourself a little bit of room around the edges in case you do have to crop. I mean, you may want to crop in a little bit, or you may want to choose a different aspect ratio for printing. So you just want to give yourself a little bit of room for crop and room for error, just in case you need it. I mean, I don't always do this, but I try to when I think of it. So just something to think about.
Okay. You know, Ben K's question, I think we're going to put off to next week because it's a little bit of a longer discussion about zoom and effective. So we'll talk about that next week, Ben. George wants to know some questions for an action cam on a budget. And then you list some things here I haven't heard of. HDR AS30, GoPro Hero, or GP3 Plus versus HDR AZ1VB. I'd say this. I think, and I put this on the holiday gift guide, and then shortly after that, the price dropped a little bit more. I think the GoPro Hero 3 Plus Silver Edition is a really nice blend. It gives you the Wi-Fi capabilities. It's got the decent 1080p at the high enough frame rates that you want. Very good quality. I'd say that is my pick. You know, there are some other third party. There are manufacturers of cams out there that around the same price maybe offer a few more features, but I just know the quality that I get out of the GoPro I am very happy with, and I would just go with that. Plus you're buying into this ecosystem that is humongous, and so if you want this kind of mount for that or that, this accessory, you're going to be able to find them. So yep. I would go with that.
Pocketful wants to know when you will be doing a review on the D810, Toby.
You know, it's been out for a while. There are some things that I just don't ever get to as reviewing as much as I would like to. We also like to create educational stuff, so we have to split our time. I'm not going to say I'm not ever going to. It might be neat to compare that against a medium format camera if we're reviewing one of those soon. Maybe we're in discussions about that. So there's a possibility, but I'll say honestly that it's not likely anytime soon. Fredzo wants to know system cameras that can be underwater as the new mobile phones. Well, there are some really nice, good point-and-shoot cameras that can go underwater. I think the key that I like, and I just heard, I think it's one of the new Panasonic Tough cameras that came out, is the fact that it can shoot RAW. Because you need a good bit of, or I would like to have a good bit of color correcting abilities when I'm shooting underwater. You have a lot of different color things that happen. Red basically just goes away when you're in, you know, just even a little bit under the water. And so having a RAW file that you can then post-process in Lightroom to get the best results out of, I think is key. And, you know, if you're shooting underwater lots, I'd get one of those nice kind of Panasonic Tough cameras or the Canon waterproof camera, or get a nice little housing for something like one of the G series as well. I think it's going to be a while before something like this can really be seen underwater. There are just so many ports, so many more, and it's such a complicated as a phone, which can be pretty much sealed up. So, I could be wrong, but I just can't see, you know, coming up from scuba diving and being like, honey, hand me that 70-200, there's a shark down there, I want to get the zoom, and slapping it on, water dripping, seaweed.
Well, it wouldn't work. We had this conversation before, right? Because even if you had a long lens, you know, the viewing distance, not the viewing distance, but you can't really see that far underwater. So even if you have a zoom lens, all you get is like
clear water.
Blue.
Okay. It's a good shot of blue.
Okay, so next
Dunk wants to know, and Dunk Geraint, both are looking for their first set of ND filters and big stopper filters. Any recommendations? You know, I personally a Tiffin 0.9, and I have been happy with it. You know, still during the middle of the day, it is not enough. It just gives me a little bit of time in the evening and in the morning to shoot. Sometimes if I'm desperate, I stack it with a circular polarizer. I think I do see some effects on image quality then, but I also haven't tried to make any pictures with those. I mostly just tried it out and then looked at them and said, yeah, that looks fine. But I wouldn't recommend going that route. You know, do you want to be able to shoot in the middle of the day? Then you need to go for the big guys. And Lee filters, they make some really nice ones. You're going to be spending a lot of money. So you got to decide, is this something you really want to do and buy them? Or do you just want to dabble a little bit, give yourself a little bit of extra time? The .9s I think would be good.
Yeah. Fabricio, and actually lots of other people have been asking about Snapseed 2.0. Do you want to give people a brief overview of your experience thus far?
I think it's very good. You know, it had been my favorite for a while, and then there are some other apps that came out, like what was the Afterlight? I like Afterlight a lot, but Snapseed is great. It's got local area adjustments now, which is pretty snazzy. Push them on, and maybe we'll try to get out a video next week just of Snapseed because we can show the editing in that. It's free. I mean, it's free. Yeah. Go try it. It's good. No, I mean, it's not raw. It's still not raw capable. There's very little that is actually raw. There are some programs that say they are mobile, but they seem to me like they just kind of let you edit the JPEG preview. I think there's something out there, at least on iPads or on iOS, that does raw, but I can't remember what it is right now.
I'm still really liking LinX. Also for editing, this isn't free. You have to have the service, but I have a lot of issues with it as well. As much as I like it, it's just so big. It takes up so much space in my phone. I have so many issues with it. It requires a lot of memory to even just import pictures that already exist on my phone. I would imagine because it has to create previews and create a catalog similarly to the way that it does on the computer. But yeah, it's just so buggy, laggy, and I mean it's improved from its very first version, which would crash often, and it's been integrated with lots of other apps like Afterlight and Instagram, and it doesn't crash anymore when you try to open them.
How has it been integrated with that? What do you mean?
Well, I don't know that it's been integrated, but it works now. Before it didn't. When you would ask it to open the photo of a certain app, it didn't list as many apps. Like it didn't list Afterlight before. And it would crash whenever I would try to open it in Instagram. So I would have to save it. That's creating a new copy. That's making me leaving even less room for new pictures on my phone.
Yeah.
But I do like I like the editing capabilities.
Yeah.
It's really flexible, and that's all I've been editing my pictures on my phone, even photos from like DSLRs.
Yeah.
Or SLRs.
How are you getting them into your phone?
Well, with the Sony, it's you can hook them up really easily.
So nice.
But then other ones, I just download them. I email them to myself or Dropbox them to myself, which I know you think it's like
Dropbox is okay.
Archaic.
Email yourself. Doesn't it cut the size?
No, it doesn't.
Okay. Full size, okay. All right.
I mean, I don't need a full size because it's just going to be displayed on a phone.
Okay.
So.
Okay. All right.
Okay, next question is...
Well, I just want to mention, I think it was Evil One mentioned A7II. That is the APS-C version, basically, of the Sony. I'd love to see or hear more about that camera soon. A6000 remains my pick for kind of your top all-around mirrorless camera. Smaller, lighter, awesome image quality, awesome focusing for a mirrorless camera. Really only beaten by the kind of the NX1, I'd say, if it is even beaten by the NX1. Mid-May, people are saying, so we'll see. That's a nice camera. Be excited. Will it have in-body image stabilization? It might. It might.
Next question by Jeff Blumel is Perfect Effects 9. What is the best module to integrate with Lightroom, Photoshop, and give me some expanded lazy man tools? I've never used this.
Never used it either, and I'm not quite sure. Does it offer modules that integrate nicely? It might. I'll tell you what I really like. Just going to take this question and go in the direction I want because I don't have an answer for you, Jeff, and that is the Nik suite of software from Google. It is now affordable and it integrates very nicely with Lightroom. You right-click and say, I want to edit this in Silver Effects Pro, and in their cool black and white tool system. That's where I've gotten my most favorite black and whites from. I struggle in Lightroom to create a good black and white. Use the presets that you've created, do a good job, but the ones that I've really gone over there, I've picked the different modules in Nik, and I hope to share more about that soon. I'd love to get Nathan back, way back to my Fuji X-T1 second opinion review where I interviewed Nathan, fantastic photographer in Italy, and also one of the people that goes on McKay trips occasionally. He's a big fan of Nik, uses it often in his workflow, and I'd love to get him to talk about it because he's used it even more.
How do you spell that?
Nik, N-I-K.
N-I-K.
It is N-I-K. You just Google Nik photo editing, and it's very good. It's very good. Fishes271 wants to know my thoughts on the Sigma 70-300 macro. First off, I hate that they call it macro. None of those lenses, all of those lenses, tack macro, and they're not one-to-one macro lenses. They just get kind of close. So it's an okay lens. It doesn't excited on the Canon side. I think the 55-250 STM is a better value. On the Nikon side, the 55 to, was it the 55 to 250 they have, or the 55 to 200 and the 55 to 300? Those are okay lenses as well. I think in that case the Sigma holds up a little bit better against them. It's a good budget zoom lens if you're desperate to get closer, but I think you're better off saving a little bit down the road. Yep.
And that was our last question for today. So if you missed it at the very beginning, we have a poll going. The link is in the show notes. So what is your preferred day for seeing us live? We're going to keep this day at 6 o'clock timeline for now. As we transition into wedding season this summer, Fridays aren't going to be that practical for us.
Right. There'd be enough that we'd have to miss that it would just be not the best.
Amateur hour. So, yeah, so just go ahead and answer that. This show, give it a thumbs up, and make sure you spend some time in the comments as well as on the chat if you watched it live. And just because we see the number of chats as comments, but we don't actually see comments on there. So anyway, if you feel like it, that would be cool too.
Yep. And I'm just adding the McKay Photography Academy link in the show notes as well. And I think that's about it.
Yep. Thank you all so much for watching. And now is when we the really awkward part.
It's not awkward anymore. It's fun, and it's the chit-chat of the Mish. I just stole that from, I think, Dalibor was saying it at the beginning before the show started. There are some people in the chat room. And for folks who aren't able to watch live, or no, not you, because I don't want to make you feel bad, but the people who haven't watched live before, there's a lot of question and answering going on in the chat room as well. A lot of smart people in there answering questions, and it is a great way to meet some other people that are interested in photography and get some questions answered. We can't, as sometimes we skip over stuff just because it'll go on forever and ever and ever. And honestly, we don't have answers to everything.
We don't. But actually, we missed this on the week ahead. Do we want to talk about the super secret?
No, not yet.
Oh,
not yet.
Sorry.
Let's wait till it's all officially
Okay.
done. But there's some exciting stuff coming next week. Early next week. Stay tuned.
Yep.
Yeah. Starting the show, it's very hungry.
Yeah. This is where we...
My review of the Sony, it's got the in-body. I took a handheld picture of flowing water. It is acceptably sharp enough to me with that nice motion blur to the water at 0.6 seconds. So almost over half a second handheld. Now I did a burst with that in-body image stabilization on. I think I was using the kit lens at the time. I think I was around 50 or so. Really impressive. I've heard some varying reports from people, though, that it only works best with native mount lenses, and you lose one of the axes of stabilization on some of the other lenses. But that's interesting. I also see people asking about mugs still. I'm sorry, I was so close to ordering this week, and then I found out what the shipping and handling would cost us to get them all here, and the price literally doubled. I don't want to charge you all a ridiculous amount for something silly like mugs. So I then started shopping around, and quantities I want to order, which I'm looking at starting an order around 30. I think that's a good decent amount that we could sell without having like a bunch of mugs and going into the feeling poor and trying to buy things at the grocery store with mugs. You think that would work? Weren't listening. No. Okay, so I am working on it. I'm working on it, but just hang on there. I appreciate everybody who is interested in a mug. Of you all out there toasting us and us toasting at the same time. Mug.
Right. Yeah. Just know that as soon as we get that sorted, we will let you know. We will not wait even a second to.
A millisecond.
Yeah.
A 0.6 seconds that you can use the image body stabilization. Yeah. I think we can finish it now.
Great. All right, everybody.
Are you going to stop it?
See you. Yes.
Okay.
Next week.
Next week,
at
Wednesday.
6.